am Claire Bennett, 34 years old, standing frozen as my father points his finger at me across the country club ballroom. 5 years since they disowned me, yet their disgust remains unchanged. My mother whispers urgently to the manager while glancing nervously at their friends. Little do they know that after years of struggle and determination, I now own the very establishment they worship. The club where they once humiliated me is mine. Their demand to speak to the owner is about to backfire spectacularly. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Grab your favorite beverage and settle in as I take you through the journey of how I went from family outcast to the moment my parents demanded to speak to me without knowing it. Growing up in the Bennett family meant understanding that appearance was everything. Our sprawling home in the most prestigious neighborhood of Brentwood, Tennessee, was less a place of comfort and more a showpiece for my parents to display their success. My father, Michael Bennett, built his wealth through commercial real estate development, and my mother, Elizabeth, devoted her life to maintaining our family image through charity galas and social committees. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family. On the inside, we were anything but. The Brentwood Country Club represented the pinnacle of local society. Membership was exclusive, waiting lists were years long, and the annual fees could have paid college tuition. My parents had been members since before I was born, and the club became the stage for much of our family drama. I was the perpetual disappointment, the black sheep who asked uncomfortable questions at dinner parties and wore the wrong clothes to formal events. Why did it matter which family donated the most to the hospital wing? Why did we need 3 vacation homes when we barely used one? These questions earned me silent car rides home and lengthy lectures about family reputation. My younger sister, Sophia, by contrast, was the golden child. 2 years my junior, she intuitively understood the unwritten rules of our social circle. She wore the right clothes, said the right things, and dated the right boys from the right families. While I struggled against the current, Sophia floated effortlessly along it, earning our parents' approval with every perfect smile and appropriate comment. Sunday brunches at the country club became a weekly exercise in humiliation. My father would critique my posture while introducing me to his business associates. My mother would sigh audibly when I ordered the wrong entree or failed to compliment Mrs. Thompson on her new pearl necklace. When I was 15, my father announced he had arranged an internship for me at his friend Robert Hayes's investment firm. I had been talking about studying photography in college, a plan my father dismissed as a hobby, not a career. I can still hear his voice, controlled but cold. Your place in this community comes with responsibilities, Claire. The Bennetts are leaders, not starving artists. You will take the internship. My mother was more subtle but equally controlling. She would enter my room with catalogs from the right colleges, leaving them casually on my desk. When I brought home a boy from my art class whose father was a high school teacher, she pulled me aside to remind me that while charity was admirable, dating should be strategic. The breaking point came shortly after my 21st birthday. I had just graduated college with a business degree my parents selected, and they expected me to accept a position at my father's company. Instead, I announced my plan to start my own online business selling artisan products from independent creators. My father exploded. "You want to be an internet peddler? After everything we've given you?" His face had turned that dangerous shade of purple that always signaled the worst was coming. My mother took a different approach. "Darling," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "perhaps you can pursue this little project as a hobby after work hours. You know, your father has already told everyone about your new position." But I held firm. I had spent 4 years studying business while secretly building my knowledge of e-commerce and digital marketing. I had planned savings from part-time jobs I had hidden from them and a desperate need to escape their control. The ultimatum came swiftly. Accept the position at Bennett Development or lose your car, your credit cards, your health insurance, and, most painfully, your family. To them, it was inconceivable that I would choose independence over their financial support. The day I moved out of the family home was the last time I saw my parents or Sophia for 5 years. My father refused to help carry boxes to my car. My mother stayed in her room, unable to witness my betrayal. Only Sophia slipped me a note with her phone number, whispering that I should call her sometime, but even she did not come to my defense or offer to help. She had too much to lose. When I drove away that day, the weight of rejection crushed my chest. I had known the choice would be difficult, but nothing prepared me for the absolute severing of family ties. No calls on birthdays, no invitations to holidays. I was erased from the Bennett family as thoroughly as if I had never existed. The first apartment I could afford was a studio with a kitchenette in a part of town my parents would never visit, in Memphis, Tennessee. The bathroom sink leaked. The neighbors fought loudly at 3 a.m., and the entire space was smaller than my old bedroom, but it was mine, paid for with my own money, and that made it precious. Those early days tested my resolve in ways I had never imagined. My business plan, which had seemed so solid in theory, faced the harsh realities of startup, costs, supply chain issues, and my own inexperience. I took a job waiting tables at a diner on weekdays and bartending on weekends, working on my business in whatever hours remained. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were often whatever was cheapest at the grocery store. The contrast between my new life and the wealth I had grown up with was stark and sometimes overwhelming. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I had made a catastrophic mistake. 6 months into my independence, I was running dangerously low on savings when a customer at the diner changed everything. Patricia Morgan, in her 50s, was a self-made business owner who left a generous tip and her business card after we spent her entire lunch break talking about entrepreneurship. "Call me if you want some advice from someone who built something from nothing," she had said. Something in her confident but kind demeanor reminded me of the woman I wanted to become. Patricia became the mentor I desperately needed. She reviewed my business plan with brutal honesty, pointing out flaws I had missed and opportunities I had overlooked. Under her guidance, I pivoted my business model, focusing on a narrower market segment with less competition. She introduced me to suppliers, taught me to negotiate, and occasionally, when things were particularly tight, found odd jobs for me around her office. My first attempt at launching still failed spectacularly. The website crashed on opening day, inventory management was a nightmare, and I lost money I could not afford to lose. I spent an entire weekend curled up in my apartment, alternating between tears and numbness. But failure proved to be my greatest teacher. I analyzed every mistake, rebuilt my systems, and approached the second launch with hard-earned wisdom. Slowly, orders began to trickle in. Not enough to quit my other jobs, but enough to keep the dream alive. During these struggles, I made another connection that would prove vital. Daniel Rivera worked at the bar where I picked up evening shifts. Unlike the friends who had drifted away when I lost my family status, Daniel saw me at my lowest and still chose to stay. We would close the bar together, then sit talking until dawn about our dreams and fears. Daniel became the family I chose rather than the one I was born into. I maintained a small box of mementos from my former life, a family photo from a vacation when I was 15, before the worst of the conflicts began. A bracelet my sister gave me for my 17th birthday. I would sometimes take these items out, studying them like artifacts from another life. The hardest part was the silence. Not a single call from my parents, not even to check if I was alive. On the anniversary of being disowned, I broke my own rule and looked at my family's social media accounts. There they were, smiling at the Brentwood Country Club's annual gala, my father receiving an award for community leadership, my mother in a designer gown, Sophia proudly at their side. It was as if the family had never had a second daughter. The pain of that erasure fueled me. Each rejection and setback in business felt minor compared to surviving family abandonment. If I could endure that, I could endure anything. My determination hardened into something unbreakable. By the end of my second year on my own, my online business was finally generating enough income that I could reduce my hours at the diner. By year 3, I was able to quit my second jobs entirely and focus solely on growing my company. The tiny studio apartment gave way to a modest one-bedroom. Ramen dinners were occasionally replaced by proper meals. Yet, even as my external circumstances improved, I struggled with an internal conflict. Part of me desperately wanted to succeed to prove my parents wrong. Another part hated that I still craved their approval. After everything, I wanted to believe I was building my life for myself, not as a reaction to their rejection. Some nights, I wasn't sure which motivation was stronger. By my late 20s, what had started as a small e-commerce site had evolved into Artisan Collective, a thriving platform connecting independent creators with consumers seeking authentic, handcrafted products. The business had expanded beyond my initial vision, now offering not just retail, but also workshops, custom orders, and consulting services for artists wanting to build their brands. My tiny team grew to 15 employees. The office upgraded from a shared co-working space to our own suite in a downtown building in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Financial stability, something I had once thought might take decades to achieve, arrived much sooner than expected. With Patricia's guidance, I began making careful investments, first in stocks, then in small commercial properties. I studied market trends obsessively, determined to build wealth that was secure and diversified. The irony that I was using lessons learned from observing my father was not lost on me, though my approach emphasized ethical business practices in ways his never had. The defining moment came when I received an offer to acquire Artisan Collective for several $1,000,000. After weeks of negotiation and soul-searching, I accepted a deal that allowed me to retain a significant role in the company while providing the capital to pursue new ventures. The little girl who had been told she would fail without family support was now financially independent beyond what even my parents could have provided. The knowledge sat in my chest like a warm, steady flame. It was around this time that news from my hometown caught my attention. I had deliberately avoided local gossip, but Daniel, who still had connections there, mentioned that the Brentwood Country Club was rumored to be in financial trouble. The economy had shifted. Younger, wealthy families were less interested in traditional clubs, and membership had declined steadily. Curiosity got the better of me. Through business contacts, I discreetly researched the situation and discovered the rumors were true. Edward Thompson, the elderly owner who had run the club for 4 decades, was looking to retire and struggling to find a buyer willing to maintain the property rather than redevelop it. An idea took root in my mind. At first, I dismissed it as a petty revenge fantasy, but the more I examined the business case, the more legitimate the opportunity appeared. The club had good bones and historical significance. With updated amenities and a more inclusive approach to membership, it could thrive again. I arranged a meeting with Edward through an intermediary, presenting myself as an anonymous investor. When we met at his office in the club, memories flooded back. The manicured grounds where my father had taught me to golf while criticizing my every swing. The dining room where my mother had once publicly corrected my table manners. The locker rooms where I had changed for swim lessons, always aware I didn't fit in with the other daughters of members. Edward was a kind man, nearing 79, who genuinely loved the club and its history. For 2 hours, he shared his concerns about finding the right buyer who would preserve the club's traditions while bringing necessary modernization. "I'll be honest with you," he said, leaning forward. "I've had higher offers from developers who would bulldoze this place for condominiums, but this club has been my life's work. I couldn't bear to see it destroyed." The negotiations lasted weeks. I insisted on complete confidentiality, using a holding company to mask my identity. Edward was initially reluctant, but became convinced of my sincerity when I outlined my vision for honoring the club's history while making it viable for the future. When I finally signed the papers making me the new owner of Brentwood Country Club, I sat alone in my car afterward and cried. They were complicated tears, mixed with vindication, sadness, and a strange sense of coming full circle. I faced an ethical dilemma about my anonymity as owner. Part of me wanted to immediately announce my acquisition, imagining my parents' shock. But the wiser part recognized that would be operating from the same wounded place that had driven me for years. Instead, I decided to let the quality of my management speak for itself, at least initially. I hired James Reynolds as club manager, an experienced professional who had worked at prestigious clubs across the country. During his interview, I was direct about my background. "The previous owners of this club once made me feel unwelcome," I explained. "I want to create an environment that maintains excellence while expanding the definition of who belongs." James proved to be not just competent but visionary. Together, we implemented careful changes. The stuffy dress code relaxed slightly. The membership committee broadened its criteria beyond family names and bank accounts to include community contributions and character. The dining options expanded beyond traditional club fare. Most importantly, we created scholarship memberships for promising young people from diverse backgrounds. The changes were gradual enough not to alienate longtime members, but significant enough to attract new ones. Membership began to grow for the first time in years. The club's finances stabilized and then flourished. All the while, I maintained my anonymity, visiting primarily during off hours or for private meetings with James. Through discreet inquiries, I learned that my family remained active members, still treating the club as their second home. My father served on committees, my mother organized charity events, and Sophia, now married to the son of another prominent family, brought her children for swimming lessons. The knowledge that they continued their lives completely unaware of my connection to their beloved institution created a strange tension within me. For months, I debated whether to reveal myself or simply continue as the silent owner, taking satisfaction in my private knowledge. Then came the announcement of the club's 50th anniversary gala. As owner, I would be expected to attend. The decision could no longer be postponed. After much reflection, I decided it was time to stop hiding, to claim my place. Not with anger or vengeance, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had built her own success. The night before the gala, I barely slept, rehearsing possible scenarios in my mind. Would my family even be there? How would I react upon seeing them? Would I maintain composure? Or would 5 years of suppressed emotions overwhelm me? By morning, I had no answers, only the certainty that avoiding this confrontation would mean I had not fully healed. The night of the gala arrived, warm and clear, perfect weather for the outdoor cocktail hour preceding the formal dinner. I chose my outfit carefully, a midnight blue gown that was elegant without being flashy, professional yet feminine. My hair, once long to please my mother, was now cut in a confident bob that framed my face. As I applied my makeup, I studied my reflection. The scared girl who had driven away from her family home 5 years ago had been replaced by a woman who stood firmly in her own power. James had arranged for me to arrive through a private entrance, allowing me to observe the gathering before making my entrance. From a second-floor window overlooking the terrace, I watched members arrive in their finery. The scene was exactly as I remembered from countless events of my youth. The same practiced laughs and air kisses, the same clustering by social rank. And then I saw them. My father, his hair now more gray than black, in an expertly tailored tuxedo. My mother, thin as ever, in a conservative but expensive gown, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. And Sophia, beautiful in deep green, holding the hand of her husband while speaking animatedly to another couple. My heart pounded so loudly I was certain James could hear it as he stood respectfully nearby, waiting for my signal. 5 years of absence compressed into a single moment of recognition. They looked older but essentially unchanged, still playing their roles in the social performance that had been their lives for as long as I could remember. "It's time," I told James, my voice steadier than I felt. My entrance was not dramatic. I simply walked into the ballroom through the main doors, accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server, and began to circulate among the guests. James had introduced me to many members during private meetings over the past months, and they greeted me warmly, unaware of my history with the club. I maintained composure through small talk, all while acutely aware of my family across the room. The moment of recognition came from my mother first. I was speaking with an elderly couple who were founding members when I saw her freeze mid-conversation, champagne glass halfway to her lips. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She touched my father's arm and whispered urgently. He turned, scanned the room, and locked eyes with me. The raw shock on his face quickly transformed into something harder, a familiar anger that had dominated my childhood. He excused himself from his conversation and began making his way toward me, my mother and Sophia following in his wake. I politely ended my conversation with the elderly couple and stood my ground, heart racing but posture straight. "Claire." My father's voice was low but tense, barely containing his anger. "What are you doing here?" Before I could answer, my mother interjected, her social smile firmly in place, though her eyes were panicked. "This is a private event, dear. Members and invited guests only." Several nearby conversations quieted as people sensed the tension. My father, always aware of appearances, noticed the attention and lowered his voice further, leaning in. "You need to leave immediately. You have no right to be here after turning your back on this family." His words were familiar, the same dismissal he had used when I left home. I maintained my composure. "Actually, I have every right to be here." My father's face darkened. "You were always stubborn, always had to make a scene." He looked around, spotted James nearby, and beckoned imperiously. "Excuse me, manager. We have a situation." James approached with professional calm. "Yes, Mr. Bennett. How may I assist you?" My father pointed at me like I was an unwelcome intruder. "This young woman is not a member and is not welcome at this event. Please escort her out immediately." My mother added, her voice sweet but eyes cold. "We apologize for the disruption. Family matters, you understand? She does not belong here." Sophia remained silent, looking between our parents and me with an unreadable expression. James maintained his professional demeanor. "I'm afraid there must be some misunderstanding, Mr. Bennett." "No misunderstanding," my father interrupted, voice rising slightly. "Get us the owner right now." "She does not belong here," my mother added with increasing urgency. "Remove her immediately." The scene had now attracted significant attention. Other members were watching openly, some with curiosity, others with the barely concealed delight people often take in witnessing the social discomfort of others. I stood quietly through this exchange, a strange calm settling over me. The moment I had both dreaded and anticipated for 5 years was unfolding, and somehow I felt more centered than I had expected. The judgment in my parents' eyes no longer held the power to destroy me. James looked at me with a respectful nod, silently asking permission to proceed. I gave a slight nod in return. He turned to my father with perfect professional courtesy. "Sir, perhaps we could discuss this more privately." My father would have none of it. His face had taken on the flush that signaled his temper was fully engaged. "No, we will discuss it right here. Get the owner now. I've been a member of this club for 30 years, and I demand that this situation be addressed immediately." James nodded, then turned to me with a small smile that only I could see the meaning behind. His words changed everything. "Ma'am, how would you like to handle your family's membership?" Time seemed to stop. The buzz of conversation around us faded to silence. My father's expression transformed from righteous anger to confusion. My mother froze, her social smile still fixed, but her eyes darting between James and me as she processed the implications of his question. Sophia audibly gasped, her hand rising to cover her mouth. I could see the exact moment understanding dawned on my father's face. His complexion shifted from angry red to shocked pale. My mother's grip on her champagne glass tightened until her knuckles showed white. "What did you say?" My father's voice had lost its commanding tone, replaced by disbelief. James maintained his professional demeanor. "I asked Miss Bennett how she would like to handle your membership, sir. As the owner of Brentwood Country Club, that decision would be hers." The surrounding crowd, which had been pretending not to listen while clearly absorbing every word, collectively inhaled. Someone whispered loudly enough to be heard. "Did he say owner?" "That's impossible," my father said, but the certainty had drained from his voice, his eyes fixed on me, demanding explanation. I met his gaze steadily. For 5 years I had imagined this moment, rehearsed what I would say, how I would feel. The reality was both more and less dramatic than I had anticipated. "It's true," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I purchased the club from Edward Thompson last year. James has been running the day-to-day operations while I focused on the business aspects." My mother recovered first, social instincts kicking in to salvage the situation. Her expression transformed into a bright, false smile. "Claire, darling, what a wonderful surprise." She stepped forward as if to embrace me, already reconstructing reality into something she could manage. "You should have told us about this marvelous accomplishment." I took a small step back, avoiding the embrace. "We haven't spoken in 5 years, Mother. When exactly should I have told you?" Sophia remained silent, but I noticed something shift in her expression, a mix of surprise and what almost looked like respect. My father had not moved, still processing the revelation. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "How could you possibly afford to buy this place?" His tone suggested I must have done something underhanded, the only explanation he could imagine for my success. Several members nearby looked uncomfortable at his rudeness. The Bennett family drama was becoming the unintentional entertainment of the evening. "I built a business," I replied simply. "It did quite well. I made investments. This club was one of them." A distinguished older gentleman who had been watching the scene stepped forward. "Michael, your daughter is being modest. Artisan Collective revolutionized the market for independent artists. The sale to Venture Group was in all the business journals." He nodded respectfully to me. "My wife has been a customer since the beginning. Remarkable business model." My father clearly had no idea what Artisan Collective was, but he recognized the name Venture Group, one of the largest investment firms in the country. His expression shifted again, recalculating my value in the only terms he truly understood: money and status. Around us, other members were whispering, connecting dots. The mysterious new owner who had been revitalizing the club was the estranged daughter of Michael and Elizabeth Bennett. It was the kind of gossip that would fuel conversations for months. Mrs. Harper, a longtime friend of my mother, approached with a calculating smile. "Elizabeth, you never told us your daughter was so successful. You must be so proud." My mother instantly switched tactics, seizing the opportunity. "Of course we're proud. Claire has always been so independent, so determined." She glanced around to ensure others were listening. "We always knew she would make her own way." The baldness of the lie might have angered me once. Now it simply confirmed what I had always known. My mother's reality was whatever served her social standing at any given moment. "I think we should continue this conversation privately," I said, keeping my voice steady. "James, would you please escort my family to my office?" James nodded. "Of course, Miss Bennet." My father looked as if he might refuse, pride battling with curiosity and the awareness of watching eyes, pride lost. He gave a curt nod and followed James, my mother and Sophia, falling into step behind him. As we walked through the club, I was acutely conscious of the reversal. My entire life, I had followed my parents through these halls, trying to meet their expectations and failing. Now they followed me, uncertain and off balance for the first time I could remember. Members stepped aside, nodding respectfully to me while watching my family with undisguised interest. My father walked stiffly, his back military straight as it always was when he felt challenged. My mother maintained her social smile, nodding to acquaintances as if this was all perfectly normal. Sophia walked slightly apart from our parents, her expression thoughtful. James opened the door to the owner's office, a space that had been Edward's sanctuary for 4 decades and was now mine. I had redecorated subtly, replacing heavy masculine furniture with clean modern pieces, adding art from artisan collective creators on the walls. Photos of staff recognition events and community outreach programs had replaced the old hunting prints. "Please have a seat," I said, gesturing to the conversation area near the windows overlooking the golf course. "Would anyone like a drink?" No one responded. My father remained standing, examining the office as if cataloging changes. My mother perched on the edge of a chair, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Sophia, after a moment's hesitation, sat in the chair farthest from our parents. James quietly asked, "Will you need anything else, Miss Bennet?" I shook my head. "Thank you, James. Would you please make sure the gala continues smoothly? I'll rejoin when we finish here." "Of course." He closed the door behind him, leaving me alone with my family for the first time in 5 years. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations and questions. I moved to my desk, not sitting behind it, which would have created too much of a barrier, but leaning against the front, a position of casual authority. "I never expected this reunion to happen here," I finally said, "but perhaps it's fitting." My father was the first to break the strained silence, his business instincts taking over. "How much did you pay for this place?" His tone suggested he was evaluating a potential investment rather than acknowledging the enormity of our reunion. "That information is confidential," I replied evenly, "but I assure you it was a fair price that satisfied both Edward and myself." My father snorted dismissively. Edward always was soft on business matters. I told him years ago he should have developed the North property for condominiums, could have doubled his money. The comment was so perfectly characteristic that I almost smiled. Of course, my father would reduce this moment to a discussion of missed profit opportunities. "The club has been profitable under my ownership," I said. "We've increased membership while maintaining the traditions that matter." My mother, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. "Darling," she began, her voice taking on the honeyed tone she used when maneuvering socially, "we're just surprised. You disappeared from our lives so completely." She looked around at Sophia as if seeking confirmation. We worried about you." The blatant rewriting of history ignited a flash of anger I had thought long resolved. "Did you?" I asked, keeping my voice level with effort. "Not once in 5 years did any of you call, text, or email to check if I was alive." My mother flinched slightly but recovered quickly. "You left us, Claire. You rejected everything we offered you. What were we supposed to do?" "Perhaps act like parents who love their child unconditionally," I suggested. The words came out sharper than I intended, the wound still tender despite years of healing. My father made a dismissive gesture. "We gave you every advantage, every opportunity. The position at my company would have set you up for life. Instead, you chose to throw it all away for some internet scheme. That internet scheme, as you call it, is why I can now afford to own this club," I pointed out. "And I built it without the advantages you think were so essential. No family connections, no financial support, just hard work and determination." My father's expression flickered, something like reluctant respect crossing his features before disappearing behind his usual mask of judgment. His entire worldview was being challenged by my success. Sophia, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "I tried to call you," she said quietly. "The first year, a few times. Your number had changed." I looked at my sister, really seeing her for the first time that evening. She had always been the perfect daughter, following the script our parents had written. Yet something in her eyes suggested that perfection had come at a cost. "It did change," I acknowledged. "I had to get a new phone when I could no longer afford the family plan." Sophia nodded, glancing quickly at our parents before continuing. "I found your business online a couple of years ago. I ordered some things. I thought maybe you'd see my name, but I guess you have employees who handle orders." The revelation surprised me. My sister, the family loyalist, had reached out in her own way. "I thought about your website sometimes," she continued. "It looked really good. Professional. I showed a friend who was starting a small business." My mother interrupted, clearly uncomfortable with this side conversation that excluded her. "Well, water under the bridge now, isn't it?" She brightened artificially. "The important thing is that you've done well for yourself, and now we can all move forward as a family again." I studied my mother, wondering if she truly believed reconciliation could be that simple, that we could just pretend the abandonment had never happened. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes betrayed uncertainty. "Moving forward would require acknowledgement of the past," I said carefully. "You cut me out of your lives completely when I didn't follow the path you chose for me." My father crossed his arms defensively. "You were being stubborn and foolish. We were trying to protect you from exactly the kind of struggle you must have gone through." "But that struggle taught me everything I needed to know," I replied, "including how to stand on my own without using family name or money as a crutch." My mother sensed the conversation heading into dangerous territory and attempted another redirection. "Claire, darling, let's not dwell on unpleasantness." She gestured around the office. "You've clearly done wonderfully. We're so proud of you now." Her emphasis on now was slight, but unmistakable. "Now that I'm successful by your standards," I clarified, "would you be proud if I owned a small coffee shop? Or if I had become a teacher? Or if I'd pursued photography like I originally wanted?" My mother looked genuinely confused by the question, as if the distinction made no sense to her. "But you're successful," she repeated, as if that settled everything. Sophia surprised me again. "I would have been proud of you anyway," she said quietly. "I always admired that you knew what you wanted." My father shot her a sharp look, but Sophia continued, stronger now. "It's true, Dad. Claire always had the courage to be herself, even when it was hard." This unexpected alliance shifted the dynamic in the room. My mother looked between Sophia and me, recalculating social alliances as she always did. My father's face darkened with the realization he might be losing control of the narrative. "So where does this leave us?" he demanded. "Are you planning to revoke our membership as some kind of revenge?" The question revealed his primary concern. Not our relationship, not the years of estrangement, but his standing at the club. It was so predictable it almost made me sad. "No," I replied simply. "I'm not going to revoke your membership." Relief flickered across both my parents' faces, quickly masked. My father nodded as if this was the only sensible decision. Good. That would have been petty. I took a deep breath, centering myself before continuing. "But I do want to be clear about boundaries going forward. You are welcome here as members, not as my parents. You lost that privilege when you disowned me." My mother opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. "Please let me finish." I continued. "I've been working on rebuilding my life after you cut me out of yours. I have my own family now. People who supported me when I had nothing, who believed in me when I struggled. They are my priority, not rebuilding a high relationship with people who abandoned me." The stark truth landed heavily in the room. My father's jaw tightened, unused to being spoken to this way. My mother's eyes filled with tears that I suspected were more about her social embarrassment than genuine remorse. Sophia stood up suddenly. "Can I talk to you alone for a minute?" she asked, glancing at our parents. My father began to object, but Sophia cut him off with unexpected firmness. "This isn't about you, Dad." Surprised by her assertiveness, he fell silent. I nodded to Sophia and gestured to the small adjoining conference room. "We can speak in there." My mother called after us, her voice brittle with forced cheerfulness. "We'll just wait here then. Take your time, girls." Inside the conference room, Sophia closed the door and turned to face me. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, measuring the changes 5 years had wrought. Her perfectly maintained exterior showed tiny cracks, the slight furrow between her brows, the tension around her mouth that hadn't been there before. "You look good, Claire," she finally said. "Different, but good." "So do you," I replied. "Though I noticed you seem tired." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "3 kids under 5 will do that to you." "3? Last I knew, you were engaged to Christopher. No children yet." She nodded. "Christopher and I have twin boys, 4 years old, and a daughter who just turned 2. She hesitated, then added, "I named her Clara. We call her Claire." The revelation stunned me into silence. My sister, who had remained within the family fold, had named her daughter after me. Before I could respond, she continued, "I should have stood up for you, Claire, when they gave you that ultimatum. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of ending up where you did." There was no judgment in her voice, just a statement of fact. "I understand," I said. "You had more to lose than I did. You fit into their world. I never did." Sophia shook her head. "I fit because I contorted myself to fit every single day." She twisted her wedding ring absently. "Do you know what I realized watching you tonight? You look free. Even facing down Dad at his angriest, you looked completely your own person." "I am," I said simply. "It was hard-won, but yes, I'm free." Sophia took a deep breath. "I want that for my kids, especially for Claire. I don't want her growing up thinking her value comes from which college she attends or who she marries." The conversation had taken an unexpected turn. My sister, whom I'd always seen as the perfect daughter, the willing participant in our parents' social machinery, had been harboring her own quiet rebellion. "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" I asked. "Just us. I could meet my niece and nephews." Sophia's smile was the first genuine expression I'd seen from any family member that evening. "I'd like that very much," she said. When we returned to the office, my parents were standing near the door, clearly having been discussing strategy in our absence. My mother immediately plastered on her social smile. "Everything good, girls?" Sophia nodded but didn't elaborate. I moved behind my desk, signaling that our family meeting was concluding. "I should get back to the gala," I said, "and you should rejoin your friends. I'm sure people are wondering about our conversation." My father, practical as ever, addressed the immediate concern. "What do we tell people?" "Whatever you like," I replied. "But the fact that I'm the new owner will be common knowledge by tomorrow morning, so I suggest you adjust to that reality quickly." He nodded curtly. Businessman to businessman. He would never apologize, never acknowledge the pain he had caused. That wasn't who Michael Bennett was. But the slight nod contained a grudging acceptance of my position, the closest to respect he was capable of showing. My mother, ever the social navigator, had already begun reconstructing the narrative in her mind. I could almost see her planning how to spin this revelation to her advantage, how by tomorrow she would be telling friends she had always known I had entrepreneurial talent. As they prepared to leave, Sophia lingered behind. "I'll call you tomorrow about coffee," she said, loud enough for our parents to hear. My mother immediately latched onto this opening. "Family brunch on Sunday," she suggested brightly. "Like old times." I met Sophia's eyes, saw her slight shake of head. "No, Mother," I said firmly. "Sophia and I will spend time together, just us for now. If and when I'm ready for more family interaction, I'll let you know." My father took my mother's arm. "Come, Elizabeth, we have guests waiting." His tone was controlled, but I recognized the forced patience he used when particularly angry. They left without another word, my father straight-backed and rigid, my mother clutching his arm perhaps tighter than necessary. Sophia gave me a final look, a mix of apology and promise, before following them out. I remained in my office for several minutes after they left, processing the encounter. It had gone both better and worse than I had imagined. The confrontation hadn't provided the catharsis I'd sometimes fantasized about, but it had cleared the air and established new boundaries. Most surprisingly, it had revealed the possibility of reconnection with Sophia, something I hadn't dared hope for. Taking a deep breath, I straightened my dress and prepared to rejoin the gala. The night was far from over, and I had a club to run. The weeks following the gala unfolded in ways I couldn't have predicted. The revelation of my ownership sent ripples through the club community, with reactions ranging from fascination to admiration to barely concealed schadenfreude directed at my parents. Some longtime members approached me with awkward congratulations, clearly unsure how to navigate the family drama they had witnessed. Others pretended nothing unusual had happened, maintaining the polite fiction that had always governed club interactions. My parents adapted in their characteristic ways. My father treated me with formal politeness when our paths crossed, acknowledging me with the same distant respect he showed business competitors. My mother attempted several times to orchestrate family gatherings, sending elaborate invitations to brunches and holiday events, as if our estrangement had been a minor scheduling conflict rather than a complete rupture. I maintained the boundaries I had established. When committee meetings required my presence and my father was there, I was professional but distant. When my mother approached with social invitations, I declined politely but firmly. I had spent years building a life without them. Reconciliation, if it ever came, would be on my terms and at my pace. The most meaningful development was my new relationship with Sophia. Our coffee meeting extended to 3 hours as we began the delicate process of rediscovering each other as adults. She brought photos of her children, including little Clara, whose serious expressions and determined chin were startlingly reminiscent of my own childhood pictures. I learned that Sophia's marriage to Christopher was more partnership than passion, a union of compatible backgrounds and shared social expectations. She spoke with resigned pragmatism about choices made to please our parents, opportunities forgone to maintain harmony. Each revelation helped me understand why she had remained when I had fled and the different kinds of courage we each had shown. Most surprising was witnessing Sophia's gradual steps toward independence. After our reconnection, she enrolled in a photography class, something she had secretly envied about my early interests. She began bringing her camera to our meetings, showing me images that revealed a genuine talent for composition and light. When she confessed that Christopher and our parents dismissed her new hobby as frivolous, I recognized the familiar pattern and encouraged her to continue anyway. By the 3-month mark after our reunion, Sophia had begun bringing her children to visit me without our parents' knowledge. Little Clara, at 2, was too young to understand the complexities of family dynamics, but she took to me immediately, perhaps recognizing something of herself in my demeanor. The twins, Ethan and Liam, were initially shy but warmed up when I took them to see the maintenance areas of the club, showing them how the golf carts were repaired and letting them help the groundskeeper feed the koi in the decorative pond. These stolen afternoons with my sister and her children became precious touchstones in my weekly routine. When Sophia admitted she had begun saving her own money in a private account, a contingency fund she kept hidden from Christopher and our parents, I recognized it as a small but significant act of self-preservation. She wasn't planning to leave her marriage, she explained, but needed to know she could if staying ever became unbearable. Meanwhile, my life continued to evolve beyond the family drama. The club thrived under my ownership, with membership increasing as word spread about our more inclusive approach and modernized facilities. James and I developed a strong professional partnership, implementing programs that honored the club's traditions while adapting to changing times. My chosen family expanded and deepened as well. Patricia, my mentor from those early struggling days, became a regular golf partner and trusted advisor on new business ventures. Daniel, who had stood by me at my lowest, now managed my philanthropic foundation, directing resources toward helping young entrepreneurs without family support systems. On the 1-year anniversary of purchasing the club, I hosted a staff appreciation event. Standing at the microphone to thank the people who had made our success possible, I caught sight of my parents sitting at a distant table. They hadn't been invited specifically, but as members, they were entitled to attend. My mother was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret, something between pride and regret. My father was nodding slightly as I spoke about business growth and community investment, the language he best understood. The sight no longer triggered pain or anger. Instead, I felt a complex peace. They were no longer the center of my universe, the arbiters of my worth. They were simply people who had played an important role in my early life, flawed individuals who had done their best within the limitations of their own understanding. That night, after the event, I sat in my office reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The scared young woman who had driven away from home with nothing but determination and a few possessions had been transformed, not just by success, but by the process of building a life true to her own values. The painful rejection that had once defined me had become merely one chapter in a much larger story. I realized then that true healing doesn't come from vindication or even forgiveness. It comes from building something new and meaningful from the broken pieces of the past. It comes from discovering your own worth, separate from others' expectations. It comes from creating boundaries that protect your peace and choosing relationships that nurture your authentic self. The country club that had once symbolized everything I couldn't be had become, ironically, the stage for my greatest growth. Not because owning it proved anything to my parents, but because the journey to that ownership had proven everything to myself. Family is complicated. The one you're born into may not always be the one that sustains you. The people who share your blood may not share your values. The greatest act of courage sometimes isn't standing up to others, but standing up for yourself, choosing your own path, even when it's lonely and uncertain. If you're watching this and feeling rejected by those who should love you unconditionally, please know your worth isn't determined by their limitations. Build your life anyway. Find your people, pursue your passions, create your own definition of success. The journey will be harder without the support others take for granted, but the strength you'll discover within yourself will carry you further than you can imagine. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who didn't support your dreams, or found yourself creating a chosen family of friends who accept you for who you are? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding your own path. Thank you for walking this journey with me, and remember, your worth isn't defined by those who failed to see it,